Further scriptural proof of man's corruption. The best way, however, of understanding both elements of man's soul is to accord him the titles conferred on him by Scripture. If the whole of man is described by the Lord's words, "What is born of flesh is flesh," as may be readily proved, it is clear that man is a miserable creature. For every inclination of the flesh is, as the Apostle says, death, seeing that it is enmity with God, because it does not yield to God's law and is incapable of submitting to it. If the flesh is so wanton as to pursue with all its powers enmity with God, if it cannot agree with God's righteousness, if, in a word, it can only bring forth death, how then, supposing man's nature to be only flesh, can we squeeze one drop of goodness from it? The objection might be made that the word flesh applies only to sensual man and not to the higher part of the soul. This, I am certain, can be easily refuted by the words of Christ and of the Apostle. The Lord asserts that man must be born again because he is flesh. He does not mean that man must be born again in a physical sense. The soul cannot be said to be reborn if only part of it is made right, but only if all of it is made new. This is confirmed by the contrast which is drawn, both here and in Paul, between the spirit and the flesh. No room is left for a middle way. Thus, on this reasoning, everything in man which is not spiritual is carnal. We do not possess one drop of the Spirit except through regeneration. Consequently, whatever we inherit from nature is flesh. I will not relate in detail what David and all the prophets say about the vanity of man. We have, however, this fine saying in the Psalms, "If man were weighed against vanity, he would be found vainer than vanity itself." This is a serious censure of man's mind, since all the thoughts which come from it are mocked as stupid, frivolous, demented, and perverse. No less a censure is pronounced upon the heart when it is described as deceitful and wilful above all else. But because I aim to be brief, I will make do with one passage which like a bright mirror will help us see the full image of our nature. For when the Apostle seeks to humble mankind's arrogance, this is what he testifies. There is no one righteous, no one who truly understands or who searches after God. All have fallen away, all are worthless. There is none who does good, not one. Their throat is like an open grave, their tongues are full of guile. Under their lips is the poison of asps, their mouth is full of slander and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood, in their path is ruin and disaster. There is no fear of God before their eyes. With these harsh words he thunders against not some men only, but the whole of Adam's race. Nor does he rebuke the corrupt manners of a single era, but blames the age-old corruption of our nature. His purpose here is not merely to reprimand men so that they will reform themselves, but rather to teach them that they are all, from the highest to the lowest, so mired in calamity that there is no escape except as God's mercy brings deliverance. And since there was no other sure way of proving that our nature lay in ruins, he cites these testimonies to show that it is worse than lost. Let us then accept that when Paul describes men in this way, it is not just because their habits are perverse, but because their nature is too. If it were not so, his argument would not stand up. He seeks to demonstrate that we have no salvation except through God's mercy, for every man is in himself lost and ruined. I am not concerned here to determine the appropriateness of the testimonies which Paul uses. I am treating them not as statements cited from the prophets, but as his own. In the first place, he strips man of righteousness, that is, of integrity and purity, then of understanding, the mark of its absence being then supplied. All have turned away from God, although to seek him is the first step to wisdom. Then come the fruits of faithlessness. All have fallen away, all have become, as it were, rotten, so that there is not one who does good. He lists as well every kind of wickedness with which all who have given way to unrighteousness defile every part of their bodies. Lastly, he protests that all men are without the fear of God, which is the rule which should direct us in all our ways. If those are the riches inherited by humankind, it is pointless to look for any good in our nature. Of course, not every kind of wickedness exists in each and every individual, but no one can deny that we all have its seed enclosed within us. Now, just as the body, once the source and substance of disease is formed within it, cannot be called healthy, even though there is no overt sign of illness nor any feeling of pain, so the soul cannot be considered healthy when it has such filth within it. The simile, however, is not entirely apt. For whatever defect the body might have, it still retains a certain vitality. But when the soul sinks into an abyss of iniquity, it is not merely flawed, it is devoid of all goodness,